Okay, welcome. We're going to go ahead and get into working on the bank account random access file system. And one thing that you can do from your book is make sure that you complete the bank account as dictated in the UML diagram of figure 10-6. I think it's on page 714 or right around there for your bank account UML diagram. I did not finish it. I added the 3 needed variables, but I did not put all of the. It looks like you need some more getters and setters there for your interest rate. I'm only going to be demonstrating a portion of the course or the class. So make sure that you add your get interest, get balance, get interest, and add balance there. And your get balance function. The get balance function, we're just kind of using the toString overload to output the balance. So finish up the bank account class on your own, please. This is what we're going to be working with for now. And when you do finish it up, it's just a few little added things to it, so it's not going to affect anything else that we're going to be looking at today. So we are going to work with a random access file. And a random access file is essentially the way that a database works. So a random access file, you essentially have set regions on the file that represents different portions of data. And you can randomly move around in that file as needed with a seek for the file pointer. Now I'm going to be getting into a whole thing on files and file pointers and stuff on another video, but the idea is that you would, let me give you kind of an example of how important random access files are. Databases, so if you have a database with 1 million records in it, are you going to want to open up that database and start at the very beginning record and read all 1 million records to get to the last record or the 1,000,001 record? No. When you open up a database file, you're going to want to read only from the portion in that database file that you want the data. So there's there's no, when you have large amounts of data, reading in the data 1 bit at a time, starting at the beginning of the file, is just stupid. It's just, that's not how things work. So for databases, and random access files, they're kind of the same thing. And when we set up a record, we have a record that is always going to be the same size. And let's say that this is a bank account. And let's say that all bank accounts are 40 bytes. So we'll just have a sequence of bank accounts in this file that are all 40 bytes. And the problem with random access files is if this bank account somehow changes size, then now everything else after this bank account right here is toasted in the byte sequence. So random access files, it's very important that you know that where the data is located in the file is probably the most important thing. Because you can put the data anywhere in the file you want. That's why we call them a random access file. And in fact, back before we had heavy-duty RAM, we would actually use diskettes, files, and a random access files as RAM. And that's kind of the beginning of a random access file. Now, when we get into, I'm going to be talking about the differences between text files and binary files. And then we're going to get into more about random access files as an informational type of session. But I want to get right into working with our bank account. And here, one thing that I want to point out is that when you're doing random access files, strings do not play nicely. And that is because a string has no set size. And it's kind of a newer type of data type. In fact, strings are how the internet works. It's how a web browser renders HTML text. So a string is it's a stream of characters, UTF-8 characters, regular ASCII code characters. And we don't have a set size for that. An integer we know is 4 bytes, so it's going to fit really nicely into our bank account set of 40 bytes. A float is 4 bytes too, or a double is 8 bytes. So whenever we're doing a random access file, the object has to be kind of the same size, and when you get into adding strings into it with no set size, that's when the random access file has to turn into what we call serialization. But if you look at our bank, I think Java actually has a way around that. Several languages do. Every language that I know that works with serialization, that's their way around dealing with binary files, is to serialize. And when you serialize, that means they just go in and output the binary of, instead of outputting the whole object as binary, you go in and you just output the integer as binary. Then you output the string, and what they do is they don't output the string as binary. They output it clear as day using serialization. Then the float is output as binary. So they just do every little piece inside except for the string is binary when you do serialization. But a random access file, you're manually doing that stuff. You're not using the serialization routine. Well, you used to have to manually do the serialization routine, but that's okay. That's another topic that we don't need to get into. But that's where you get into, you don't really want to save strings. You want to use a char array, which is totally possible in Java. You can convert from a string to a char array. But that's kind of where we're at. And if you look from your bank account example, there is not a string inside of it, which is good. Because we don't want a random access file for a string. And also another thing about random access files. Yes, you can always append to the end of them. And there doesn't have to be anything inside the file. But a random access file has to exist before you try to open it. And that's because we are kind of using it like it's RAM. Random access memory, when it's actually disk memory. And that's kind of the main beginning of random access files, is because they were used in lieu of RAM because we didn't have RAM. We just didn't have it. And now they're databases. That's what they are. And they've got all kinds of different ways around the whole string issue and whatnot. But so what we're going to do today is we're going to go ahead and get into the bank account. Go ahead and build your bank account class. And back to this idea is, if we want to have, say, 4 bank accounts, and we want to just modify this bank account, we would take the file pointer that is just something you don't see. Think of the file pointer as your eyes that moves across of the book letters when you're reading a book. It's like your eyes. You're reading a book, you open a book, and the file pointer, your eyes start at the beginning of the book. The file pointer is an implicit thing that you don't see, but it always starts at the beginning of a file. When you use the seek function, the file pointer will move over down to where you want it to go in that place, and whenever you do your next read or write operation, it'll start from that position in the file, for that file where you put that file pointer. So again, the file pointer is an implicit thing you don't see. You need to be aware that it's there. Every time you do a read or write, the file pointer moves forward or back. There is both a read and a write file pointer. I don't think so in Java. I think they kind of put them together, but we'll see. We can get in there and get more. No, there was only one seek function, if I remember right. So no, there's probably just a read and write file pointer for Java. So you can use that seek function to manipulate that file pointer anywhere you want and do a read or write operation. And whenever you do that read or write operation, that file pointer automatically advances by the amount you've read or written in the file. So it's just like when you open up a book to do any writing. You start at the very top of your ledger and you use your pen writing across the screen, and it's writing, and the pen that you're writing across the screen with is your file pointer. It's that simple. It's just like your eyes on reading a book and writing with a pen. but it's there. You got to know it's there. It's implicit. So when you use that seek function, you're directly manipulating that file pointer to move you around in the file. Okay, so let's go ahead and start writing some code. We're going to be getting into that more of that informational session later. So here's kind of where I'm working with the bank account. Now we're going to be actually using some code that was already built for us. We have three programs that we're going to implement into this to get our bank account actually serializing. And what I'm going to do is we're going to examine that code real quick here. First, we need to actually create the file. So this is the example for creating an inventory file. Now, you know what we're going to do is we're just going to create this code and we're going to just run it and then comment it out. But I know that we're going to need these imports. We need our input output Java library and our scanner library for the serialization, and also we're not serializing, but it's also for the exception handling. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring that code in, and then we're going to bring in this create inventory item file Java. Now you guys know this code is in your appendix H of your program files. So you can look in your folder for your program files and look in appendix H, and you will find in appendix H these files that I'm talking about. So the first thing that we're going to implement is creating the file itself, and then we're going to examine the file. So let's go ahead and take this first bit, which is our include, and we're going to put that into our main class, where we're going to be writing our code to, oh, okay, that's fine. Refactor if you want to do whatever you're going to do. What added in, whatever. Okay, so anyways, what a mess. All right, whatever. All right, let's see. We're going to go into our main, and this is where we're going to input our imports, and then we're going to instantiate some bank accounts, and we're going to save them to disk so that we just have something to the file that we can work with, because we're going to add records to the file, and then we're going to modify those records. And sometimes if you have a random access file, some of those records you may not even be used, depending on what you're doing with it. So let's go ahead and import your the bank account and get going. You don't like me because I think I messed up my packages. Yeah, I did. Whatever. Okay. Yeah. All right, bank account import. Let's go back to what package I called it. I called it JBank. Okay. I might have to fix that. JBank. All right, guys. I'm going to restart this. And I am going to redo this project and come back. Okay. So we've got our bank program going. We are including our input output. We're including our bank account object. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go into that class and start outputting. So I'm going to go into the create inventory file, and we are going to then output the objects to the file. We'll probably just put like 4 or 5 out there. It looks like we're creating an array. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to grab this whole chunk and just hack and slash. And we're going to get in there and grab what we need and what we don't need. Okay, and eventually we probably won't even be using this code after we get the file created. So I'm going to go ahead in here. You know what? Let's make it as a function, just because that way I don't have to get rid of it. Because you know what? we may end up actually making it, using it again. So let's just throw this whole thing in as a pre-built function. We'll just rename this main to save file and then call on it, modify it and call on it. So we're going to go ahead and public create. Oh, yeah. Okay. Now let's clean up all the goobers. And we do not want, when we want to create, it looks like we're setting up to output 5 accounts. We're going to do 5 accounts. We don't need an item description. We don't need that. Okay, and then here is, instead of inventory item, this is going to be bank account. And I've got my import bank account up here. Okay, and it looks like num items. You know what? That's just stupid. Let's get rid of that stupid thing. And are we going to be doing any keyboard input for this? I don't think so. We're just gonna generate it. So we're good there. We don't need to enter data. You know what I am going to do though? Just because I want this, this should act like a database. So you know what we should do is we should add this. An ID. And you know what? While we're doing that, let's go ahead and throw in a constructor. And let's go ahead and overload it just because I want to set that ID when I instantiate it. And then it's just gonna be something that's gonna set balance, balance equals 0, and the ID of the account to what was passed in. And that way we can print it from file and look at the ID and make sure that everything's been done properly when we save it to the file, load it from file, and print the output. Okay, so I've added my ID to the bank account. And it looks like I forgot a little bit of some code. Okay. There we go. That's good. Now we're going to go ahead and go back to our code that we're writing. And we're going to create 5 accounts. Now this is just setting up the double pointer, creating the, this is just creating an array of pointers that then reference the actual accounts. So this is a pointer to a pointer. And then each of these pointers in this array of 5 pointers that go to each bank account, we need to then instantiate those for the 5 that we have. And so we're not going to get anything from the user. Don't need any of that. Don't need any of this. This is where we're going to be doing things. Right here, items. You know what? And I don't like items. Let's call that accounts. Okay, and then accounts. Now for each item, for each account, we're going to send it the ID of I. And so every account will have its own ID. And we've instantiated the array of pointers, and then for every pointer we actually, or for every, we instantiated the array of references, and for every reference we instantiated the actual bank account. Now these accounts are ready to save to file. So we're going to go ahead and open up a file. We're going to create a file, and we're going to write. We're going to create a file pointer and write that information to the file. And to do that, we're going to look at the inventory item file object. So let's go ahead and go into the inventory item file object. And this is what actually is going to do the work. So the record size evidently is 44. I believe that there should be there is a size of function so you can check the size of an actual object, and that way you can do your seek functions a little bit better. But we're gonna go ahead and grab a hold of this code. We want a random access file. We're already getting our input output, so we're gonna be getting these two items. And we'll probably be bringing these in and using them when we get to the next part of the code. So we are actually not going to create an inventory file. We're going to just go ahead and instantiate the actual random access file. And these guys are going to be locals for now. And when I create the random access file, I'm going to declare the random access file at the beginning of the function. I'm going to call this accounts file. And then I am going to, for the amount of accounts that we've instantiated, we are going to go ahead and write those items out. And we can do it as soon as we get done instantiating it. So we don't need to do that in, something else. But here's the thing that you want to always remember is that whenever you open up a file, make sure you close it. It's just good practice. Okay. Now we need our file instantiation. So we create the random access file. Then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to write that inventory information to the file. And here's the way that they get beyond the string portion. So remember I was talking about how strings cannot be done in random access files. So and that's what serialization is for. This is the way around it. Is you just take the string and output the chars instead. So what we're going to do is, since we have no problems with serialization and string content, we should be able to output and chunk this whole object to file or to binary without having to do the little parts inside of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a write of the object, and then we're going to print it out. So I'm going to use this as kind of an example to go into where we're heading into. And I'm going to put it all together and get it working. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you the account objects being written to file. And then we'll progress from there. Okay, thank you. I'll be back soon. Yeah, so as I thought, no, you cannot output, you can't output the whole object to file in Java because of the whole string problem. So that when you do that, it actually implements serialization. So from the assignment, we actually want to do random access. And so with that, we're going to have to individually write each of those items in our class to the file manually. And we'll do that with a function that's called write to file and read to file for the whole object. That way, when we do a seek, we can just put the file pointer at the beginning of the object, and then we'll call our function, and it'll go through and read or write the amount of bytes that we're expecting. So we are going to do this by hand, and then that'll make you or have you have a little bit more appreciation for serialization, actually, because usually what you do is you just chunk the whole object to file instead of doing every little piece. So let's go ahead and implement this write function. And what we're going to do is write every little piece of data that represents in the file. So with the particular piece of data that we're outputting in the object. So essentially, we're just going to be writing the variables in piecemeal one by one into the file. So we're going to use the write char, a bunch of different write functions here to make this work properly. The first thing that we're going to implement is we want to have a write bank item. So we're going to go ahead and just grab this whole thing, and I'm going to modify it to work with, our class. And we're going to have to change our size and everything to get this all kind of to work together. We've got a few things. Okay, so write to inventory. Let's go ahead and bring that into our code that we're playing with. And what I'm going to do is these are functions that this is a function that we're probably going to be actually implementing we're going to be calling it here. So let's go ahead and put that function in, and then we're going to make it work. Now I'm not putting this in a class yet or anything. I'm going to go ahead and just put it in there. This is going to be write account item, and we're going to get a bank account, and we are not going to do this. And we are not going to do this. Should we be doing any throws? Yeah, that's fine. We can keep that. This is where we're going to be. So you notice how it's doing for every piece of that string it's outputting as char for the random access file. We don't need all of that. All we have to do is pass the inventory file to the function, and we're going to call that the bank file. And that is the type of the inventory file. We're going to get into the data type for the actual inventory file. Let's see where we're at here. Okay, so that's going to be our inventory item. That's going to be actually something else, but our actual file let's see. Let's modify that. You know what? Let's just start outputting the data and just say the heck with it. We'll pass it when we get it. So let's just go ahead and do inventory file. We'll call it bank file. Call it write char. And then when this is called, there's our move file by pointer, get number of record. You know what? You might do better just to take this whole class and implement it. We might do better with that than trying to just go in and yeah, I'm already stuck on this. So I am going to come back after I clean things up a little bit and give you kind of the whole thing. Okay, you got it all ported to something that is going to begin to work. And let me give you just a full overview of where we're at so far. I created an account object. Now I did make some modifications to this account object I got to catch up on. I added the ID. I made that an integer. I got rid of the interest stuff because you guys can do that. I only want to show you the get ID and get balance and just output that stuff. So you guys added the extra stuff in. But I did make that an integer and call it ID. And I made it so that we just have a balance and an ID in the class now with a get ID, get balance, a bank account constructor that sets the ID, and then of course the other little objects. So that's kind of the new bank account object that we're testing out now, and of course you can add to that or you need to add to that. So that's the whole bank account object so far. And now what we're doing is we're in the regular code, and I have a function that takes the file pointer or the file object and a bank account, and it writes to the current location of where the file pointer is, the integer for each record and the double for each record. So we can say now that when we look at it, we have for our actual bank account class, you can think of them as just boxes, of data that has, an integer. And, well, okay, my scribbles are not working very well here. So you can kind of think of it as, hey, each one in the file, each record has an integer and a double. And those two records, the integer and double, the ID and the balance, we will stack up in the file, in order. So we'll have integer double, next record, integer double, next record, integer double, and those will represent the record. So your record, you're going to have integer double, 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 because you got like interest and something else you got to put in there. So that's kind of where we're headed. So this function write account item, that's going to write one specific account to the file at the specific location that the file pointer is particular in, and that's the account that it's going. You got to make sure you put in this throws IO exception because the write functions they will throw an exception. And then, of course, you have to go in, and when you create it and start writing to the files, you have to try that exception. So you've got to, now, when you go to create the file, we're going to create the file with the RandomAccessFile object, call it accounts file. The file is going to be saved to disk with account.dat. Don't put C : or any crap like that. This is the way it should be done. And then we are going to instantiate our 5 bank accounts. And then after an instantiation of each bank account, we call that write account file, sending it to the file pointer, and it outputs that particular account in the array. And that's what that create function will do, is it'll just go through the file, or it'll create the file one integer, one record at a time before it goes on to the next record, and it'll create 5 of those. So we want to just print that, and we know that we have an integer and a double, so that's 8 bytes plus 4 bytes. That's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 bytes per record. So I think that should be 12 bytes per record. So let's just go over here, 12 bytes. Because integer is 4 bytes, a double is 8. So around 12 bytes per record. And now we're ready to actually test it by writing the account item. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the size of the file and make sure that it matches 12 times 5. That amount of bytes. So all we have to do now is call these functions. And I'm going to call the create function, and we're going to step through. And then we're going to examine, and then we're going to read them, and then I'm going to talk to you about the update. And then leave you with that as your challenge. Okay, so we call the create function, and now we're going to call the, oh yeah, we just need to call the create function because that does everything from there. And oh, we got to pass it. Oh no, we don't. We just got to call it. Oh, that's right, because everything's got to be an object. And I keep forgetting that stuff. We're going to take this code now that we built, and we're going to make it into our own object that represents saving the file. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just take this guy out. Okay, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to say new Java class. And we're going to call this create file. Good. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and put those as functions. And then we're going to instantiate this object, and we're going to run these functions. Now, as far as the constructor is concerned, I don't think we need a constructor. We're just using this object as a holder for our functions. That's all we're doing. Is because, well, duh, everything in Java has to be an object. It can't have functions just on its own. Yeah, start writing in C++ again. Yeah. Okay, so now we've got our object that's going to hold our account creation functions. And now we're going to go ahead and go back to our main code and call on that particular object. We're going to import it. I believe I can do this. Yeah. There we go. Okay, we got our create file object set up and ready to go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to instantiate it. And then I'm going to start calling those functions so we can examine our code. So now I'm going to just say c.create. Okay, let's go ahead and now test this. Maybe something is not liking me. That's fine. Go ahead and do that. All right. So, throws IO exception. Make sure you add that. All right. We have success. We have a create file object that we can test that'll create our random access file. And then we're going to get into, I'm going to give you a little head start on one of the main things that I'm looking for, which is not just be able to read the file. We're going to read the file and print it, but I want to be able to, for you to be able to update the file. And we may end up changing that create file object to an object to manage our accounts, account management class or something like that, or account file management or file account management class. So let's just verify that we're actually saving this information. And what I want to do is I want to set a breakpoint, and I'm going to do a check-in or a couple step intos, just to see that, hey, things are working. We create the account, we write the account. Looks like that write account is not dying on me. Okay, so those accounts should be created. So I'm going to go ahead and look at our project folder. And I'm going to look for the file that we just output. And there it is, account.dat. Now what I'm looking for is we wrote 5 records to file, and each record should be 12 bytes. So I'm looking for something that is close to the amount of bytes that we have. Okay, so so there's probably a little bit more in there than 12 bytes because it is an object. So it looks like each record is, well, 12 times 5 is not 60. So it looks like it's picked up some extra from something. The object itself takes up bytes itself, so that's most likely where it's at. Alrighty, so we got data in there. The next thing that we're going to do is we are going to build the read method. The read so that we can print. And this is going to be a read inventory method, and we're going to put that in our class that we just got done developing. And good. Now this move file pointer, we're going to be getting into that here in a little bit. And then we're going to look at record size eventually, so we can start navigating it. All right, let's just get it so that we can print it. Well, I'm going to take that read inventory and we're just going to copy. And it's actually kind of just it's just backwards of what you do when you save it. So here we go. Let's go back into our create file. And we're going to read the information now. So we're going to modify this code quite a bit. And the inventory item, we're just going to have this function print. Read the information into, oh, it looks like it returns it. Let's just have it read through, and what we'll do is we will go from there on it and make the modifications as needed. We don't need this. We do need that for loop. That's going to be, we're going to do that 5 times. And we can read in each of the items that we need from the file into our array, but let's just read the items and print them right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a dummy bank account class here. And that's just going to be for reading. And let's do a -9 for an ID, just because this is, you know, just a one for reading in. It's not going to be an actual one that we're going to be using. All right, so this is where we get into reading in that particular bank account. R.I. So the bank account, I want to go to the bank account that I'm reading in, and I want to set the ID of that bank account. So I'm going to go back to my bank account. I'm going to go over here to the bank account class that I have. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to say public void set ID. I'm not going to build it for the other balance one. You guys can do that. Because I'm just going to try to get these things printing with their... yeah, I'm going to do the balance one. Might as well. And then we're going to set the ID of that new bank account that we're loading in piece by piece. Then I'm going to copy this, and we're going to do get balance. Oh, we already got that one. We just need to get, we already have that one. Okay, we're good. Get ID and get balance are set. So, oh, it's set ID that I needed. Set balance and set ID. Okay, balance is equal to ID. All right, now I'm ready to read in the data and assign it to, and I think I'm gonna call this a different thing than create file.java. It should be called account management.java. So we'll probably make that change here. So what I want to do now is I want to go to the set ID of reading in from the binary. So I'm going to do a read int here of the inventory file or the account file. And I'm going to be doing that when I read it in each time. So that haven't got the code for yet. So let's go ahead. We got the set ID going for when we read the information. And now what we want is to open up the file, run through an array of 5 items. And we may want to modify this so it just gets one particular item and returns it from the array, or all of them. So the first step is to, open the file and get a read account item variable going. But before that, we have to pass it the accounts file for reading the inventory, because when we do a read inventory, we just want it to read that particular location that we're at sometimes. So, hey, we may want to pass it. I think what we're going to do is we're going to just inherit, we're going to create it. And this is going to be with, we're going to do read, write for both. But when we do a read inventory, we actually should be passing this accounts file because it's going to be said to already be open. The create, we'll go ahead and just create it, and that's all it's going to do is create the file. The read inventory item and the write inventory item, the write account item, it's going to take these guys and do it just for one at a time, because we're going to have menu options that just does one or the other based on, particular where we're at in the file. So let's go ahead and make this read inventory item act kind of the same way in the fact that you have to send it the random access file that you're currently on. And then it will return an account that you've read. And we'll call that 5 times. And it's going to be, we're going to have our create, and then we're going to have a read function. So that's what the read function is going to do, is just read one particular record and return it back to us. So what we'll do is we're going to return that bank account that we read based on the current location the file pointer is at in the file, based on our previous reads or writes. So we're going to create the bank account that we're going to set. We're going to go ahead and do the read option. If we go and look at our code that's already been built for us, we look at our read inventory code, and we're going to have a read int and a read read double. So we'll go back over to here. We're going to say, okay, take the file pointer, the bank file, and read an integer and assign the current bank account that we're filling, set ID, read int, okay, and now we're going to do the same thing. Except for we're going to set the double. Oh, set balance. And this is going to be read double. Okay, and we're going to make a change because this is now, this class has kind of grown, and it's now more of a, how would I say, oh, I got to return. So now that we've got that, you know what we're going to do is we're going to rename this. Instead of create file, this is going to be account manager. Okay, we're going to rename it account manager because it's doing account file management. So we're going to call that account file manager. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to rename it here. Oh, that's fine. I'll do it in the I'll just rename the class for now. That's fine. Okay, let's go ahead and go over here. Okay, and then this is going to be account file manager and a new account file manager. Okay, and then this is going to be create the file, and then what we're going to do is we're going to read it, but let's get it actually compiling instead. I might have to just walk back that renaming because it probably just doesn't like it. But let's see. Yep, there we go, finally. Okay, so it did the last bit. So we're now calling it account file manager, and it allowed me to rename it with the little pop-up over here. So we call the create function that creates the file. We have a function to read an item. We have a function to write an item, and we have a function to read an item. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create another function, and we're going to call this read. And this will actually do the reading of the information. And we can send it an array to fill up if we wanted to. But right now, I just want to get something writing and reading. And you guys can work on getting that stuff returned back. And let's go ahead and call this read all. And now what we're going to do is open the account for reading and writing. We got the random access file open. And 5 times, we're going to open up the account, and for 5 times, we're going to, oh, you know what? Let's create that 5 accounts here. That we're going to read into. We need to instantiate it, but what we want to do is we want to instantiate it with the ID that we read. So we don't instantiate it until we read the data. And so what we want to do is we want to actually assign accounts of I equal to the return account. So we don't want to actually instantiate that. We want to make it actually come back. Oh wait, no, we have to instantiate it. And let's instantiate it all as 0 so that we're not confusing things. And now what we'll do is we will actually perform the reading function for each time through the array. And I'm going to call the read inventory item. So I'm going to say accounts of I equals read inventory item. And this is where I need to send my random access file, accounts file, for its current location. This is what stores your file pointer and where it's located in the file as you progress every time you do a read and a write. So your current location in the file, and then the next thing to do would be to, I think that's all it needs. Yeah. Well, we could do this. No. Let's say that it's going to get that data and then print it, and hopefully it actually works. We'll see. Because then it'll be a happy dance. If not, then I'm pausing and we're going to figure it out. So let's do this. I think I overloaded the 2 strings, so it should be able to do this. Accounts of I. Okay. So all it's doing is just outputting, you're actually just doing your own homebrew serialization right here. You're actually doing serialization. It's done for you, but then you have a lot of limitations with the string stuff. So random access files have their place. And if you have a string, you can just convert it to a char. Like the example, the inventory item example shows you. Okay, let's see if we're actually saving the file and we're able to print this data out from the read all function after we've created them. Go ahead and go to this. C dot. Oh, there's one thing that we have to do that's going to cause a problem that we may have to do later. Before I do this test, we may need to, because of the way you're using it, you may want to actually have this random access file instantiation up here as a public class eventually. So you're going to want to probably put that up here, you know, some kind of instantiation of the random access file. But, you know, the way I'm using it, you know, we'll see how well it works out. Okay, let's go ahead and we're going to set a breakpoint. We're going to do the file's already created, so we don't need to run that. So we're going to run we're going to run the c.readall. I'm going to set a breakpoint there to see if we're doing okay. Okay, we're going to do a step into. Okay, bank accounts. We create 5 of them. Read them. Bank accounts of I. Does it have the data that I'm looking for? Let's add a watch for this guy. Oh, we don't have to. He's down there. So the first one should have 0 for the ID, which is fine. But it's the second one that I want to see. Okay, now this one should have 1 for the ID. So we go down here, the second one that we've read in. Ah, there it is. There it is. 1 for the ID. Beautiful. It's working. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit, let's just run it. Let's just run it, have it output our IDs. And now we have our random access file. So we've actually created serialization on our own. And that's, and remember, serialization is because of the string limitations, and that's for every language. C#, C++, Java, all of the super languages, as I call them, JavaScript, you know, all that stuff is serialization is a part of the languages, and it all works the same. You know, for every language, it doesn't really matter. Let's run this full in the clear as a full test. And then I'm going to give you a full showing of the files that we came up with today as we progressed. And I think we're ready to test. Okay, let's just run it, see if it prints. There we go, balance. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we have successful liftoff of our random access file. Okay, now here's what you're going to have to do. What I want you to be able to do is run the seek function. And I want you to be able to seek ahead in your random access file, which means you're going to need to know the size of each record. And you're going to seek ahead in the file to get each particular record. And what I would like you to do is be able to run the seek function and go to a specific access location in the file to update it. So, you know, read through the instructions of the assignment, but here's where your main thing is we're going to want to have something that, you know, like some menu options to add records. You know, you're going to do it in the account file manager. You're going to add records. You're going to remove records. You'll do it all in here in this access manager, account file manager. But here's the main one that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to update a record. And so what you do is you will, to update the record, and let me just go ahead and do the pseudocode for you. So what we're going to do here is for your void update record, you're going to have the user enter new information for a record. And so what you're going to have to do for a record to update it is you're going to need to know the location. So what record are you going to update? Are you going to update the second record? Are you going to search for a specific ID to change the record? Go ahead and just have the user enter a number for a specific record to change. Modify record. And what you're going to do is you're going to have this integer record number, and then you're going to have your random access file. And this is going to, the random access file has to... Did I not put that into the class? Oh, I didn't do a void. That's why. I was wondering. So this one should ask me for the... You know what? I think I just... Let's show the whole function up here. Because this is kind of the main thing. So, oh, we got to do random access file. I think I might have spelled it wrong. Capital F. All right, pseudocode for your pseudocode. The first thing you're going to do is, well, here, this thing right here. You may not want to instantiate your random access file every time, but open file with new, just like you did on line 32. Line 32. Use seek option to move bytes in file for record number times, well, it's 4 bytes, 4 plus 8 bytes. So it would be 12 bytes times 12. So verify, make sure that every record's 12 bytes. You know, there'll be a function that you can look up in Java for, I can't remember what it is, to look at the size of. It's a size of function. So you can determine how large your actual records are. So you're going to use the seek option to move the amount of bytes in the file. Then you're going to overwrite, yes, overwrite, or just call the write account item with new updated record. That's all you got to do. It's already done. The write account item is done. So you just, once you open up the random access file, you seek your random access file, you seek your bytes to get to the one right at the beginning. So what you're going to do is you're going to seek. You'll have your random access file, and let's say that you want to go to the third record. So the third record is the size of the record itself times 3. The size of record times 3 is, well, the size of the record saying it's 12, and the record number is 3, means that we need to seek by, from the beginning of the record, which is at the 0 bytes, we need to seek by 12 times 3, because this takes up 12 bytes, this takes up 12 bytes, this takes up 12 bytes. The information that we have located is at the very beginning of that set of 12. So we have a fence post. So if we're looking for the third record, we're taking the size of the record. We want to seek the size of the record, which is 12 times, well, saying it's 12, you guys look into that. You want to look at the size of your, look into the function for finding the size of your object that you're saving. So you do the size of the record times the record number, which is 3, but we got to do record number minus 1 because there's a fence post. So it's going to be the record number minus 1. So if you put it in and you say you want the record number 3, then the seek will do 12 times 4. 12 times, if we want record number 3, then that means that we want to take the size of the record and multiply it by n minus 1, which is 2. So that'll give us 24, which tells us to seek 24 bytes up from byte 0, which puts our file pointer right there, right at the beginning of the third record we want to read. And that's why you do the n minus 1. So you do the size of the record, and then you multiply it by the number of records minus 1, because we're working with 0-based memory. So at the 0 is, 0 byte is the first integer, and double pair. Then your next integer double pair, then the next integer double pair. So you'll seek by 24 bytes, or just to have the user enter n and do your 12 times n minus 1, or size of record times n minus 1. And then what you do is, once you get that seek working, ask user for n or record number, seek by record number, seek by record size times n minus 1. And n minus 1 happens first before you do your seek. So you're going to do a seek. You're going to run some kind of seek function, and you're going to seek to the 24th byte. That's where you want to get when you run your seek. Is you want to run that and get that file pointer to that 24th byte in the record. And then you just overwrite it and just call your write account item again with a new record to update it, after you've asked the user for the updates. Okay, guys, that's the example of random access files, and kind of showing how it all goes together. You guys, you're going to be making some changes on this account file manager to match kind of what your assignment kind of gives you, but it's a start that gives you a direction and something concrete to work with. Let's go through all the code again before we call it. First thing that I implemented was an account object that has a double called balance and an ID. You have more to add. I added my accessors and my toString overload. So let's look at it from the very beginning. Here's the first part of it, all the way up to line 25. I'm going to pause. Okay, here's the next part of it, all the way from line 25 all the way down to the last end of it, which is your final override toString. Then our account file manager, which begins with a create function that just creates the file. It has to exist so that you can have the read-write privileges. It has to exist before you can open it up in mode read-write. So you got to create it first. Well, I mean, it has to exist before you use it in mode read-write. And the first thing that we do after we create is have the ability to read all the records and print them from the file. That's good. And now you need to add a few more things. You need to be able to add a record, delete a record, and modify a record. So your modify record, you're going to open the file like you did in line 32. Ask the user for a record number. Seek in the record. Seek your file pointer. Move your file pointer, and then call your write account number with your moved file pointer file as the argument. And you may need to add a few more things for when you do reading and writing for the file. But the main thing that I want you to do is just extend this, add the add record, delete record, and update record. I want you to be able to have more than 5 records in there. So I want you to be able to add to the end of the records too. So that's what the add record will be able to handle for you. So you can add a record by appending to the end of known records, delete a record, or overwrite a record. When you delete a record, you just blank it out and set it up for, well, you know what, heck with it. Just follow what the assignment tells you to do. and this will give you a head start. Okay, so let's go from the very beginning, the account file manager. Bring in my file management code. Here's my modify record function that you're going to be getting into. We're going to write an account item to file. We create the file, and after we've written some account items, then we have the ability to read the file, and this reads a single record. Okay, so just from the very bottom down, pause. Okay, down to the create. Pause. Okay, now down to here, bank account, pause. That's from the read all. And that's the end of that object. Now to actually using it, that's where we initially had to create it before we could do anything. And then we did a read all to print it, and you guys are going to eventually, you can put your menu here if you want, or you can put it in the account file manager, but go ahead and finish out the rest of what the assignment states as indicated. Thank you.